On this short video, I want to discuss a number of verses at the very end of our weekly reading, Parshat Mishpatim. It talks about how Moshe is going up the mountain and tells the elders, and in particular, three specific people besides Moshe are mentioned here: Yoshua and Aaron and Hur, plus a number of other elders. And he tells them to stay behind, to stay below, and if there will be any questions or any financial issues that the Jewish people will have, they will have to take care of it. The people who have financial disputes or issues will have to approach them. And then Moshe goes up the mountain. And Yoshua went together with Moshe some of the way. He still stayed behind, of course. The only person who was on the mountain was Moshe himself, but Yoshua wasn't staying together with the rest of the elders. He was somewhere in between. That's why we learn later, 2 parshas later, that when the Jewish people made the golden calf, Yoshua didn't even know about it. It was Moshe who came down, and Yoshua told him that he doesn't understand what's going on. He hears some kind of voices, some kind of screams from the camp, but he doesn't know what's going on. So Yoshua was definitely closer than anybody else besides Moshe, but he also didn't go up. Whereas the rest of the elders, they were near the camp, and that's why Aaron later will take part in the building of the golden calf. When the people will demand, Aaron will feel that he has to do it. And of course, the tradition of our sages, Chazar's tradition, is that Hur was actually killed by the mob. When the people demanded the golden calf, they killed Hur. All of this is not mentioned in the Torah, but is a tradition in the Talmudic tradition and in the various midrashim. And this is going to apply to the 3 weekly readings from now. This is going to be about the parsha of Ki Tisa, one of the saddest episodes in our history, the big fall down of the Jewish people when they built the golden calf. This is something else to talk about, of course, what exactly they did and why, and it's not so simple to understand why the people who just recently had revelation that heard all prophets in a certain sense, heard divine voice, revelation at Sinai, and then all of a sudden 40 days later they built a golden calf. But this is a discussion for a different parsha. Maybe when we get to Parshat Ki Tisa, 3 weeks from now, we'll discuss it in greater detail possibly. But what I wanted to discuss today is a few questions with regards to, first of all, who was this Hur? Hur already was mentioned at the end of Parshat Bishalach in the battle with Amalek. Remember, Hur and Aaron were holding Moshe's hands. Moshe was, when he got tired, was sitting on a stone, and Aaron was on one side and Hur was on another. So who is this Hur? In the Sefer Divrei Hayamim, the last book of Tanakh, the last biblical book, they usually call it in English Chronicles. So in that book, it's mentioned the genealogy of Hur, presumably the same person, and that's how Chazal understand it. This Hur, he was a son of Kalev, who, according to Chazal, was the same Kalev who was sent in the episode of the spies in Parshat Shelach Lecha. Kalev and Yoshua were the 2 spies who did not sin, who were not afraid, and who were trying to encourage people to go to the land of Israel. When the rest of the other 10 spies, of course, failed their missions. So 2 of the spies, Yoshua is clearly Yoshua, the student of Moshe, who is mentioned here as well, and Kalev is Kalev ben Yefune. However, it's not clear at all that the Kalev that's mentioned in the book of Divrei Hayamim is the same Kalev. There it says in the genealogy of this Kalev is that he was the son of Hetzron, who was the grandson of Yehuda. If you remember, Yehuda had from Tamar Peretz and Zerach. And Peretz had 2 other children, one of whom was Hetzron. So this Hetzron had Kalev, and Kalev had Hur. So presumably, Kalev ben Chetzron is not the same person as Kalev ben Yefune. And that's how Ibn Ezra and many commentators explain. And it makes a lot of sense chronologically, and also it makes a lot of sense if we assume that Bezalel ben Uri ben Hur Limatei Uda, the person who was responsible, was the chief architect in building of the Mishkan, as we will learn later in the next Parshiot. If he is the great grandson of this Hur, he was Bezalel ben Uri ben Hur, right? So he was grandson of this Hur. So presumably, if Hur himself was the son of Kalev, he'd be too young to have grandchildren who could be architects building the temple. But the sages, Chazal, do not have a problem with that. In fact, in Tractate Sanhedrin, and now the Daf Yomi cycle is learning Tractate Sanhedrin, it mentions that sometimes people used to have children very early. Chazal, Kalev actually married Miriam. So Hur was the son of Kalev, the husband of Miriam. And according to this, he was the son of Miriam. And there is a different tradition by Josephus, Yosef Flavi. He says that Hur was the husband of Miriam, interestingly. So there was some kind of a tradition that Hur somehow is a relative of Moshe, somehow, either his nephew or his brother-in-law, right, the husband of his sister. So it makes a lot of sense that the two people close to Moshe, who were holding his hands at the time when the battle with Amalek was happening. One was his brother, and one was his brother-in-law or his nephew. So whatever the case may be, the people who were the greatest leaders besides Yoshua were, of course, Aaron and Hur, and also the sons of Aaron are mentioned as well, and then the rest of the sages, the elders. And one interesting technical law that we learn from these particular verses, it says that whoever will have some kind of a including financial problems, some person who needs judgment will approach you, Moshe told the elders and the leaders. So from here, Chazal learn that when there is a monetary dispute, it's the person who is trying to get something. He needs to bring the proofs. He's the one approaching, basically. He needs to bring the tainot, the arguments and the proofs. For example, if there is a dispute about ownership of some object, A owns some object and B says, no, it's mine. We don't say, well, let's divide it into half, half and half. That would be fair. No. If somebody is holding on to it, he's the presumed owner. And the other side has to bring the argument. That's what they call in Hebrew, Hamotzee Mehavero, Alav Haraya, that the burden of proof is on the one who is trying to get something. So if he can't prove it, then the other side doesn't have to give him anything. They don't have to split. Different story is if each one has somewhat of an ownership, meaning let's say two people are holding on to an object and each one says it's all mine. Then there are cases when we divide it actually. But in the case when one already has the object in his or her possession and the other side wants to get it, then they have to bring the proof. So of course it's not mentioned openly, but it's hinted, sort of hinted in this particular story. And on this I'm going to end for today. If you like this video, please press like and please subscribe to our channel.